run that back? Yeah, let's run that back. Hello and welcome to Testing Magic Monday with Mike. Today's host will be me, Mike. In this series, we'll talk about all things testing and some of the neat tricks. Some things that I've learned over the years throughout my experience in the testing space. We'll be demystifying testing and showing you all there is to know about it, from APIs to CI/CD integrations to some tips and tricks around automation. And remember, a great tester always reveals his secrets. Let the show begin! Okay, so as I said, am I standing up? Am I supposed to be, can you else? Okay, are we good now? This week's episode will be all about APIs. Who could have guessed that? API actually stands for Application Programming Interface, which may make it sound even more confusing now that I think about it. But not to worry, we are here to demystify everything in the testing space, APIs included. So first off, it's good to understand what APIs are and why they are useful to us as testers. APIs are commonly used to interface with various forms of data sources in a programmatic way. They make it easy to send and receive data from otherwise obfuscated sources. But that's not all they do. They also allow testers to utilize data in their tests that they would normally only be able to access directly through a database. And no one likes doing that. APIs are the bread and butter of the exchange of information over the internet. But how do we take advantage of them as testers? Well, I'm here to answer that. So let's take a look at some pretty common APIs that are used in the industry. First, we have REST APIs. Perhaps the most prevalent type of API is a RESTful one. REST is yet another acronym, I know, and it stands for Representational State Transfer. If you're impressed, please don't be. I had to look that one up, actually. I commonly forget these. But REST is very popular due to its accessibility, documentation, and unique stateless design. It also allows for a multitude of different file types, further adding to its flexibility. Often seen as the more intuitive API, seeing as how it is used nearly everywhere. Every time you submit a form online, you click checkout in your Amazon cart, or you send an email to your dog sitter asking them why are they booked for the next 3 years, preventing you from being able to take a vacation that you had planned for 2 years and that you've never been. Oh. So that was a little specific. You get the idea. Statelessness is a key component to any RESTful API. Where was I? Statefulness is a key component to any RESTful API. Essentially, what this means is that every request made by the client, that's you or whatever the source of the call is being made from, must include all the information to understand the request. The server has all the information stored and gives you a response back for what you asked for. Whether you made a post, which is sending data, or a GET request, which is receiving data, the server will know what to give you based on the information in the request. I like to think of things in terms of a metaphor. So let's think in the context of ordering food at a restaurant. You are the client, and the restaurant is the server. First, you go to the restaurant, you sit down at a specific table, and your server takes your order. You tell them what you want to eat, how you want it cooked, what you're allergic to, and yeah, that's pretty much it. This is the post request. This is where you're sending data to the specific server or the restaurant. You tell it exactly what you want created. Then you may flag down the waiter because you've been there for about 2 hours and you've been waiting for your food and you still haven't gotten it. So you may ask what the status of your food is. This is an example of a GET request, where you're querying the status of your initial request. In order for the server to understand this request, not only do they need to speak the same language as you, but they also need to know which table it came from and what the initial order was. Once the food arrives, this is a response back that you've been waiting for. The loop is completed. And you can exit this silly metaphor because I'm really just running out of examples here. Anyways, there's much more to RESTful APIs, but there are others that we should talk about as well, perhaps in maybe less detail. SOAP! And I'm not talking about the stuff you wash your hands with here. I'm talking about Simple Object Access Protocol. SOAP is a bit older than REST in terms of its history, and it's much less flexible, while it does provide a lot more structure to each request. A SOAP request is usually made of structured components, and they can include up to 4 of these types of components, including an envelope, a header, a body, and a fault. The fault is used typically for error handling. Typically, you see SOAP in more secure environments or where the organization requires tighter controls on how it might be used. SOAP does require more bandwidth for each request than REST, but it works very well with process-heavy architectures. There's more to SOAP than meets the eye, but for now, I think I've explained it well enough. So you get the idea. These are the two primary APIs that are used. There are definitely other API types that are out there, like composite APIs, RPC, which is another acronym that you can look up, and GraphQL, which is really more of an API querying language than an actual API itself, but there's debate online. Anyway, however, I think it's time, let's shift the focus back to testing, because that's why we're here, right? We talked about two primary APIs and how they're used for interfacing with applications, but how are they actually used by testers? To explain that, it's best we bring in our resident texting expert, Darth Data. How am I supposed to read my script like this? It's too cloudy in here. Greetings, everyone. I'm Darth Data, and today I'm here to talk to you about data-driven testing, or DDD for short. Man, I still get choked up thinking about it, or maybe that's the helmet. I can't breathe in this thing. Anyways, DDT is my favorite type of testing. I just love designing tests to be self-contained, tidy, and modular. I mean, who doesn't? APIs are the topic for today, however, so what do they have to do with DDT, you might ask? Great question, I might say. As defined by Guru99, the data-driven framework is an automated testing framework in which input values are read from data files and stored into variables and test scripts. It enables testers to build positive and negative test cases into a single test. Input data's data-driven framework can be stored in a single, multiple data sources like an XLS file, XML, CSV, and databases. Well put, Guru99. But I would also add APIs to that list as well. We can utilize APIs to receive structured data to be used in our test. DDT is more common in automation testing due to the scalability you can achieve by covering a multitude of various scenarios with a single test that is data-driven. And remember, always manage your data. Wow, that was excellent. Thank you so much, Darth Data. That was excellent. Well put. Okay, then let's do well to remember that. There's another key aspect of APIs in the context of testing that we were missing out on, however. To talk about that, let's introduce our second guest of the day, End-to-End Eddie. Yo! I'm End-to-End Eddie. You probably didn't know this about me, but I love end-to-end testing. My favorite part of end-to-end testing is following and validating the flow of data. It's just so pretty. So pretty. But we're talking about APIs, brother. So APIs are used in all sorts of applications, and they are a great way of requesting and creating data over the web without the use of an actual user interface. I mean, my voice keeps changing. We can do it programmatically. And yeah, I said that. So end-to-end tests are characterized by involving more than one application and usually follow a typical user journey from beginning to the end. Many times it involves the usage of, you guessed it, APIs. And don't forget, if it ain't tested, it's broke. Wow. Thanks, Eddie. That was very insightful stuff. So to elaborate on Eddie's point, let's get into a brief demo. Transition. Let's say we want to test the submission of a form and validate that the data is being sent correctly to the endpoint. A great way to design the test is to first think about the flow of data. It really is just, it's quite beautiful. I just think the flow of data as it moves, it's almost like a river and a stream, and it makes me think of that Bruce Lee quote where he's like, be like water. Where were we? Right, the first thing, we'll start by looking at the flow of data from the starting point, in this case the form, to the endpoint. The application under test, or AUT for short, which is really just a common way of referring to the thing that we're actually testing. Makes sense. Once the form's submitted, a POST request is sent to the server from the client containing all the information the user typed into the form fields. So, your social security number, your address, what your name is, your email, all those kinds of things. Now, presumably the server has saved this data for the client to be able to access it in the future from another source. We can validate this, however, by sending a GET request to the server with the relevant identifiers to retrieve our form data. Excellent. But if we're focused on verifying the information in the user interface, or on the other side, then we can simulate the submission of a form using a simple POST request with all of our data in the body of the request. Pretty cool stuff, right? This is just one example of APIs in testing. There are many others, believe me. I promise there are. You'll just have to take my word for it. Or you can, you know what, you can ask ChatGPT or something, I don't know. Anyway, that about wraps things up for today, so I thank you so much for listening on this episode of Testing Magic Mondays with Mike. I've been your host, Mike, and today you've learned all about APIs. Our two main takeaways from today are manage your data wisely. What did I say there? Our two main takeaways for today are manage your data wisely. If it ain't tested, it's broke. Now what are you waiting for? Go forth and test!